Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming along to this Agency Local Ask the Expert session. Good turnout this afternoon, and I think this whole subject around sales is a really interesting one for everybody. It's certainly becoming a bit of a tightrope for us all. You know, when do you really start to do the hard sell? We all need to sell. We all need to generate business, but what's the best way of going about it? So I think it should be an interesting session. I'm delighted that we've got Martin Knowles here with us from Sales Untangled, many years of sales experience. I will let Martin introduce himself and to sort of drive the session. He's got some interesting observations and some tips and ways for us to approach this. And then I'll open up the microphones for a general Q&A session. Already got a couple of questions come in prior to the session, so that should be good. Excellent. Good. Well, Martin, I will hand over to you and away you go.
Yeah, so Chris and I, thanks for the introduction, Chris. And Chris and I were chatting about this probably a couple of weeks ago and saying, what is going on at the moment with sales? Is it, there's a question about, can you sell in a pandemic? And I think the question maybe even, should you sell in a pandemic? And then at the same time, this question of some people who are doing extremely well and some businesses that are racing beyond any expectations they ever had for the first half of the year. And so we said, well, it's a sort of mix of sales in a pandemic and a pandemic in sales. Which one of those two is it? So I just started to pull together some ideas around that, really, some conversation topics. And it is such a big topic of sales that this is really high level. I've kept it quite high level. So as Chris said, let's pick up some questions. I'm not sure that I can see chat as we go through this at the same time as I see the charts. But I think Chris is going to act as my PA and organizer, nodding vigorously for some reason. And so if you post comments as we go, then Chris can facilitate questions. So please do put questions, because I'm sure there'll be some unanswered questions as we go through. I guess nobody needs reminding about the bad news, and we all know the housing market is effectively dead. Airlines, international travel, effectively dead. Though other industries are suffering seriously at the moment, but then some are doing well. And so this is just a selection of headlines that tell you, amongst others, condom sales are doing well, and the Bible sales are doing well. So there's a lot of stuff it's not all gloom and doom. And what the picture that comes out of this is so many industries have changed very radically in just 8 weeks. And if I tried to categorize it, I'd say that pretty much businesses are finding they're in one of three situations. So there are businesses that are effectively, they've gone boom and they're grown beyond anything they could have expected. And some of the obvious ones there are IT services, anything remote. I think there was within a week of lockdown, we'd run out of laptops. So there are all sorts of boom times for IT services, people like accountants, people who are in associated services like legal, HR services, and so on, because businesses have had to change their size and shape so quickly and their cash flow so quickly. They're a real boom for those sorts of businesses. And of course, it goes without saying that online is just huge. So the people in these sorts of businesses are under high pressure right away, but it's a good sort of pressure if there is such a thing. The middle ones are effectively bust. Hopefully it's a short-term thing that they dropped off a cliff and will bounce back relatively quickly. But things like restaurants, airlines, other than the headline grabbers like Tesco and Ocado that are doing very well, actually retail outside of food is not doing well at all. People like clothes retailers are having a really tough time. So a lot of industries are under really high pressure again now, but under high pressure for very much less encouraging reasons than the first group. And then finally, there's this group of people who are going along with business as usual. And it must have been a Yorkshire farmer who said, "You can't furlough a cow." And so there are some industries that haven't really changed. But I think the more you dig into this, you think, well, the farming, we've got farmers who are pouring away milk. We've got farmers who can't sell steak because it used to sell to restaurants and they're producing too much mince and not enough steak. Utilities, on the face of it, you'd say are stable, but again, because we're not heating offices any longer, that again is changing. So even some of those that you think are business as usual I'd argue probably are in a situation where they'll be under high pressure soon, rather than just being able to plod along business as usual. If you were to look at your clients or to look at your people you know, whichever way you want to answer it, which of those three groups would you say that most people are in right now? Do you think it's mainly boom, mainly bust, or is it mainly business as usual?
Bust, BAU, business as usual, business as usual, business as usual, bust stroke business as usual.
Really, that's very, very interesting. And that is the opposite of what I would have expected and what I'm seeing. So I would have said for me, probably more in boom than anything, a lot in bust, and nobody in business as usual. So that's great, actually great news, and you've got a chance to keep things ticking along with the business as usual sector. So it's interesting, but does anybody disagree that the business as usual is likely to be shaken up in the relatively short future, and do you think actually it's just going to carry on business as usual? That people are under at the moment, a lot, and most businesses, and maybe you'll argue the business as usual are not in this sector.
I've just unmuted if anybody wants to comment.
I was just wondering whether business as usual it's not business as usual in terms of the normal rate of business necessarily, is it? But it's people who are trading, for example. Say the supermarkets are probably have more online deliveries, for example, or that kind of thing. So are we saying business as usual actually means two things? It's either people who are still working, but also people who are trading differently.
Yeah, I think it's a good example. If you think of supermarkets who, in a way, are business as usual, but have already gone through that spike when their shelves were empty, which is nothing like usual, hasn't happened probably in our lifetimes. And then they're under huge pressure to ramp up their online deliveries, because people now are saying, well, we don't want to go into your shops. They've got massive staffing problems, have to recruit literally tens of thousands of people. So even for somewhere like that, which is ticking along, and if you think you've got a reasonably robust short-term future, business as usual it's not stable. It's certainly placing them under a great deal of pressure. And I guess as we come to think about selling and how do we interact with people, keep contacting our customers, it's that pressure that affects their decision making and their responses to it. So I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. I think is that virtually everybody is under high pressure one way or another at the moment in today's buying market. And I suppose that's where this leaves us. So in terms of decision makers, where they would normally be in one of these four boxes, and you say that they're probably the key decision makers are not dealing with not urgent, not important, the stuff that they drop, but there will be things that they can plan, there will be things that they can delegate. But because of the intensity of the situation we're in at the moment, virtually all clients are going to be focused purely on urgent and important, and it doesn't get in the box of urgent and important. It's really high priority. I've got to do it today or this week. It doesn't get done at all. So there's much less scope of our buying decision makers have got much less flexibility in their thinking behavioural patterns than they normally have. And for a number of us, we'd have got to the start of the year and thought order books look great, and all of a sudden they're not. And I guess the question is, if anybody needs me to explain the Liverpool situation, just shout. But the big question for a lot of us is that business cancelled or is that business postponed? Because if the business is on a hold for 3 months and we got it again later in the year, then we've just got a short-term cash flow crisis, and we can limp through until whenever it is, June or the end of furlough in October or Christmas, and then the business comes back. There's an element of stability and predictability, but where there is none of that, and where businesses, where we think actually we had a full order book and those orders may have gone, then we've got a completely different challenge ahead of us. So I guess that's really the critical question as we come to analyse how do we deal with clients and prospects. What position do we think they're in? Do we think they have cancelled buying decisions, or do we think they've postponed them? It's quite key to how we approach them. And thinking about the sort of behavioural piece, then every individual, and that includes myself and ourselves, will respond differently to crisis. And I think as people come under more pressure, they probably revert more to which one of these is their natural space. So for me personally, I'm probably quite rational. If in a crisis, I'm likely to be very, very well think it through. But I'm sure you all know people who are at the moment absolutely rushed off their feet. They cannot work too hard because they've got a load of stuff they need to do. They want to do the homeschooling, they want to do the job, they want to be online with people, but because their hands, they think by doing, they're desperate to get stuff done. And I'm sure we also know people who are really struggling at the moment because they have that emotional connection driven by feelings and just overwhelmed by that forces them to feel overwhelmed by the whole current circumstance and their inability to deal with it. And as more and more like behavioural psychologists and so on come to talk about mental health. They're saying it's the loss of control that makes us feel that makes it so difficult for people. It's the lack of structure and the lack of feeling in control of things. So people will respond differently, and it sort of throws up this question about what's the future going to look like. And this is just a very, very small number of examples, but Mercedes famously stood up in, something like 2 or 3 weeks at the start of this crisis and produced a ventilator for the NHS. We've got brewers who are producing hand gel. We've got pubs who are saying, well, actually, we always were part of the community, but now we want to go back to that. We're going to start doing farmers markets. And so businesses are starting, at least the creative ones, the ones who didn't pour away their beer after 6 weeks and say that's the end of it, are thinking of different ways now of shaping their business. And there's no real reason to believe that it will all go back to normal. The likelihood is that some of these companies and some of these industries will say there is a new base for us, we've found new opportunities and we'll seize it. So all at once it feels like it's a really difficult and worrying crisis, and that simultaneously a fantastic opportunity for people to shake up business and break old paradigms. And I guess the question for us as individuals working with those sorts of companies and clients is figuring out who are going to be the winners and what's the future going to look like, and how do we help people get to that and get to a positive outcome for that future. And that sort of leads on to, and I've deliberately created a very simple 3-point sales plan. So let's just think a little bit about customers and how do we deal with existing customers who may or may not be in a place of crisis. How do we deal with prospects and what they look like for the future? And I think one of the questions was Carl, and it said when's the right time to start asking about opening new business. And if those two things are not enough for you and they're not filling the diary, then what projects and things are that could be done that help in the longer term? So I kept it quite simple. As I said at the start, please do throw in questions later on if it's not in enough detail. But I think that the critical thing in terms of customers is I think that we have to recognise that customers are in a different place. It goes back to that boom bust or a new form of business as usual. But they are in a different place. And I think my instinct and many people's instinct is if you reach out to them and they don't respond, you think, I'll leave it a while before I chase. And I think in today's environment with people being so squeezed and so pushed, there's a very good chance they won't come back. So we've got to have a degree of resilience to keep reaching out to people, make ourselves available where they are in the crisis and where their heads are, how their emotions are. And at some point, I think we'll be recognised and thanked for it. But I wouldn't necessarily expect a quick response. Some people will be quick because they've got time in their hands, and some people won't come back to you. But I think it gets points in the bank if that's how you like to look at it. And for those customers that haven't, and maybe for those that you're describing as business as usual, it feels like everybody is going to have some sort of crisis. That maybe that people can get through until we officially enter recession, which is almost guaranteed to happen. And I think as consultants and people are less, not involved in the day-to-day business, but part of our role is to help them decide what sort of crisis they're going to say. Is it going to be a crisis of demand, or is it going to be a crisis of cash, or is it going to be a crisis of sales? I mean, what part of their business is going to come under most pressure? And I think we've got a real opportunity to help people out by just standing on the sidelines almost and giving advice in that respect. Commercially, there's a couple of big things wrapped up in one sentence here. There's the first piece about if you have customers who are in a difficult situation, how do you deal with credit terms, and what if somebody's not paying you? How hard do you go in on getting paid? Do you squeeze people for cash flow? Do you proactively go out to people and offer longer credit terms? Which I think all of which needs to be done on a sort of case-by-case basis, really. And also, how do you price things? Do you price things because you think you've got spare capacity and you start dropping price? Do you start to think about reducing, say, ongoing contract terms? Just to give a very headline view, I'd probably suggest by all means change the revenue you get from somebody, but stick to that age-old principle, which is more work costs more. And I'd be very reluctant to advise somebody to deliver the same service they normally deliver for a significantly smaller amount of money. By all means, do stuff free. And if you think of some of the companies that are supplying the NHS with PPE now, doing it for nothing, nobody expects that in 6 months' time the NHS will go back and say, we know you can do it for nothing, carry on doing it for nothing. It's obviously it's a one-off and easier to get out of. If you dropped your price by 20% and so delivered PPE, then in 6 months' time they'll go back and say, well, you can do it at that price. So I think it's easier to distinguish between full price and zero price and or mixed in with a different proposition, rather than to drop the price of your standard business. And the final point, I think, is really, it's just I would say at the moment, yes, you can sell, but I think it needs to be a collaboration. It needs to be to the first point about meeting customers where they are emotionally and rationally at the moment, then reach out to them and support them, recognizing that that can sell in the long term, but I wouldn't get too pushy at the moment. I'd be really nervous about pushing hard with businesses at the moment. If you want to sort of start to plan, there are all sorts of ways you can go about it. This is just a way of pulling together some of the things we just described. So if you took the boom, bust, and business as usual and placed each client or customer into this, so of those that are boom, bust, business as usual, are your key decision makers responding rationally? Are they responding emotionally? Are they just really busy rushing around? And you'll think then, if you use this sort of approach, you'll find different ways of interacting with each of those businesses. And I think the tailoring and the bespoke interaction is key, really, to getting on the right foot with people. In terms of prospects, this perhaps plays a little bit into that question of is it right to sell? And this is a quote that I had from a managing director I was speaking to probably 3 weeks ago now. And he said, look, I've printed off my top 100 contacts. I'm going to get in touch with them all the next week or two. If I wait until it's over, it's going to look crap. I can't get in touch at the end of it. I've got to be in touch now. And it's an opportunity. I've got an empty diary that I haven't had for 2 years, 3 years. And it's a chance just to pick up the phone to these guys who I've got contact details for them. It'd be nice to have a chat. And if I do it when they're under pressure and I've got the opportunity, it'll look all right. But if I wait until it's all over and then say I need some business, I need to ramp up, it just won't look right. So I think there's good reason to be early in responding to people from a sales point of view. But I think it's important to be on the page of the people you're talking to and recognizing the challenges they've got and the way they're likely to respond in doing that. And it's got to be about a mutually beneficial conversation, not just about pitching and selling. And then in terms of project sales plan, what are the jobs we never get around to? So I think a lot of people will say we never get time to stop and think about strategy. But one of the things that's really coming out of this whole crisis for so many people is questioning the whole piece about purpose as well. And I'm sure that the people at the end of this have seen, I really don't want to spend the rest of my life carting to London on the train every day. I don't want to sit nose to tail on the M40 sitting spewing out fumes every day. And I think there will be a number of people, a number of businesses who seek to take this opportunity to clarify why it is they bother. And that is just a massive opportunity for us to help businesses think through that. Why is it they do what they do? Start with that whole question of why, and what are the big important things that drive the business to a different place. And then following on from that, for some people, they'll be saying, I really don't want to do this more than another 3 years or 5 years away. So there's acquisition, exit, really reshaping the business. These are the sort of things that tend to get done, or often get done on the hoof, and it's a really good opportunity to take some time, if there is some time, to think about these things. The next 3 things I think are all very specifically about sales. So in terms of customer prioritization, going back to the boom, bust, and business as usual, even if you said that your biggest customers were your most important, and I always challenge that, I rarely believe it, because some are more profitable than others, but may not be the biggest. But the shape of that will be different in the next few months and probably in years to come. So in terms of sectors and channels and customers, now is a great opportunity to start to think about which of those channels are going to be that are really going to help my business over the next coming months. And at the same time, not just the biggest, but which are the ones that we enjoy working with, which are the ones that fit with our purpose, which are the ones that are a pain, never pay us on time, never give us a brief with good lead times. So actually cost us a lot of money to do with it. It's a really good opportunity to go through that whole customer prioritization piece. CRM entries and sales funnel, it's always the same. I've done mine in the last 2 weeks. Just going through the CRM, updating all contacts, and just questioning whether people you describe as prospects are really prospects, or somebody that had a quote from you 9 months ago, is it really a likely sale, or is it just gone? And I think it's a really good opportunity to clean that up and get a nice base of understanding where prospects really are, where your future sales opportunities really are, and have a look at the sales funnel. Just question, well, people, how many prospects do I need to have before I get a sale, or how many conversations do I have on networking meetings, getting the good old days, do I need to go to generate some sort of revenue? So all that sort of stuff can be done. And if you've done the sales stuff, other things that of course generate sales, marketing activities you might say, but other things that generate sales over the longer term. So things like website design, which is something we're in the middle of at the moment. Posting blogs. I mean, how many people have got a website that has got a blog page and wasn't updated since 2018? So it's again an opportunity to do that and just think about what campaign we could put out over the next 6 months. The business book, again, people have talked about doing that sort of stuff and talked about, but getting it done is another challenge. Social media, good chance to engage, good chance to plan out campaigns for the second half of the year. And then beyond that, there's this whole piece again about community. And so many businesses have really stepped up their community efforts, literally as an immediate response in the last few weeks. But it's shown, I think, a real willingness of organisations to do that. And it's a great opportunity for us and our businesses and the people around us to start to think about what role does that play, how does that form a part of the role that we want to play in our local communities, our business communities. So there are a whole load of things alongside the sales bit that are probably long-term sales generative that are really worthwhile if you've got time and space to be able to think about them at the moment. So that's a real headline view in terms of how to approach customers, existing customers, how to approach prospects and how to deal with prospects in a subtle sort of way, and some projects to do alongside it. I wouldn't recommend taking on the whole list, so that's a bit long, but some projects that you can prioritise alongside it. And that would be my, as a headline, my approach to sales. And I think at this point, probably open it up and ask it for any questions or anything that people would like me to go into in any more detail. As Chris said, there were a couple of questions that came in earlier.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Martin. I'd just like to gauge what everybody's view is and what people's approaches are to sales at the moment. Should we be selling? We need to generate business. So anybody got any views on their approach that they're willing to share?
Yeah.
Emma, let's start with you.
Well, we've put out an offer last week and we've made 6 sales, and we're also selling our photo booth, which is booking out for next year. So I think the thing is, depends who you're targeting, because that's obviously, that's both business to business and business to customer, but there are people out there that are still wanting to buy. I feel like I'd be interested to hear your views on it, Martin, as well, but I do feel like business to customer is almost going to be an easier sell because they tend to be in well-paid jobs or they're furloughed, so they've still got the incomes and they're kind of ready to buy or looking for the next best thing, or they're planning for what party they're going to throw in things. So,
and they're bored, aren't they? They're bored at the moment, and they've got time, so they're going shopping.
Yeah, so everyone's online at the moment, and I think we're almost doing a disservice by not putting ourselves out there, because there's people that actually are interested in, like, we put our offer out and we didn't have a pay now button, and then people were like, well, how do I pay for it? And they didn't need the conversation beforehand, they knew they wanted it, so we added a pay now button, and then we got most of the sales through that. And it was quite interesting because I didn't know how it was going to go at all. And so I think
that's excellent.
Understanding, I think what Martin was saying about understanding where they're coming from and is really, really important. But I think that's important whatever you do, as long as you can empathise and understand where they're coming from, so you can see what solution you can offer them to help them. But yeah.
Absolutely. Anybody else got observations they want to make?
I think looking at the difference between B2C and B2B, with existing customers, we obviously it's easy enough to do the keeping in touch and the sell to need. But with new business at all, it's almost impossible, or we're finding, I don't know if everyone else is, that there is obviously there are no new contacts available as such, or they're not available to talk to, or unwilling to listen at the moment, because it's just not something that's on their priority list. So where do you go with those new business sales that are cold or warm leads?
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that, and particularly for businesses where they've had to furlough staff but they're still operational. It means the people that are still working are generally rushed off their feet and kind of suddenly stepping into multiple other roles, often in other departments. So then it makes it very difficult for them to justify bringing in external consultant types. That's the challenge I've faced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's even a soft touch, even a gentle prod feels to them, I think, like a hard sell at the wrong time.
Interestingly, we as a business, we do a lot of systems for franchise organisations. So I've been looking at joining a large franchise organisation. So I just sent them an email yesterday, and the response I got was actually from the CEO, because everyone else has been furloughed. So I managed to get the response. Top man, yeah, I know, because everyone's furloughed, so someone's got to answer it. I mean, most of my staff are furloughed because we do a lot of stuff for restaurants and hotels. So if someone answers the calls on the phone, they're instantly going to get me. So you're going to get more senior people who aren't furloughed if you're trying to contact someone.
I think there is some of that. I'm certainly picking up that some people are having better, longer conversations with prospective clients because they're stuck at home and still working. They've got time to have a meaningful conversation without the phone ringing, without another meeting to go to. So there is a mix of everything, from people you can't get hold of because they're no longer in a job or they're stuck at home, or people who are working but working a different way and actually can get more access to. And I think that's why it's really difficult to give any hard and fast rules about it, because people are in completely different places from where they were just a few weeks ago. And that's in terms of their workload, their responsibilities, their emotions and everything. So that the whole way of getting to people and their response is different. But if there was a common theme running through it, I think everybody, very few people, I think, will respond to a hard sell in today's environment. I think you can be cold sell if you pitch your story right and you pitch your messaging right and your reason for getting in touch and how you're potentially adding value to them. And I think that's acceptable. But I would be cautious about sort of hard selling in any circumstances at the moment.
It's selling with compassion, though, isn't it? It's having conversations with compassion. I think that's the right. One of my businesses is a telemarketing company, and in the first couple of weeks, when we were thinking, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" We picked up 3 new clients. They were all IT companies who wanted to sell to companies who are now having to put their staff out to work from home and didn't have the technology and everything. So that worked really well. And since then, the bits of the work we've done. I agree with you, Martin. It's that we're getting to speak to people who have more time to speak with us on behalf of our clients and are asking meaningful questions about our clients' services or products that they offer. So we're definitely feeling that people have that time. And as long as you're not disingenuous with your communication, as long as you're thoughtful about your message, we haven't had any negativity around that yet. On the flip side, on my other business is training and coaching, and what I've managed to do there, so I train sales teams. What I've managed to do there is flip one of the clients to, he's furloughed his sales team, but he wants them coming back into business positive and not being negative about the fact that they've only been on 80% of what they could have been earning for some time. So the coaching has been working with those salespeople to get them into a positive frame of mind. So you can always sort of switch to something, but as long as it's done properly and genuinely, I think that's the message, really.
Yes. So have you had to change the sort of tone and the sort of scripting and stuff of the telesales calls that you're making to people?
Definitely. Yeah, you can't. I mean, we always try to encourage clients on the telemarketing side not to go in hard as we used to do in the 80s, to always try to build a relationship from the first call. So that's very much our style anyway. But we're very mindful of the message that we're putting out there at the moment. We give people, even if we do get through to people, we're giving people an out to not speak to us if now is not the right time for them. But we're not finding that. We're finding people are happy to have conversations. And even if we're not getting the business now, I sort of feel it's a step on behalf of our clients in the right direction, that when times are better, they'll be in with a good chance of doing business with people. And it's maintaining that positivity, I think, is really important too.
Natalie, do you mind me asking that in exactly that same way? We have a telesales company who were ready to go, unfortunately, the week before lockdown happens, and we put everything on hold. I'm in a quandary as to whether now is a good time to say to them, well, yes, spend some time now and get in touch with people, or do we wait another week, or do we wait until businesses are back? I guess it's from your side, if you're managing your own telesales, then it's an easier way to do it. But if I'm paying someone else to do that, am I investing now or not?
What's your market? Who are you targeting, Carl? What do you do?
A few different sectors. We're design and print. So obviously production has gone almost to a standstill. But on a design side, there is still some capacity out there. I mean, we've got capacity to do the work, and some will be now starting to look at return to work. We're putting HTMLs out this week for return to work collateral literature, posters, several that people are going to need.
Yeah.
Do I include telesales into that now, would you say?
I would say yes, because if you think about all the new signage, all the new messages that companies are going to need to communicate, or the government is saying people can go back to work, but in a safe environment. So there'll need to be key messages going out in print, signage and everything. I think that your what you're offering is a here and now. So I would say, yes, I'd get your telesales people working on that. Maybe whatever message they were going to take before might have to be changed a little bit.
Yeah.
I would definitely get them working. I think that's for sure. Get them working on that now.
That's what I was considering, just a change of tact for short term. Yeah.
I would agree with that.
I'd endorse that.
Yeah, as marketeers, we are encouraging people to review their imagery, their branding, to do all the stuff they never did and should have done. We're getting new business cards organized. We're actually struggling to find printers who work. So I think it's a good time to pave the way for the future, because people are going to want to trade again at some point. And it's a good time now for them to review everything.
They are. I think there's very, very robust evidence that people that market in a crisis come out of that crisis in a better shape, because some people give up, and so you get better market share coming out of it. So you get a better return. And at the moment, the crisis is so multifaceted that there is more change going on, more businesses than it's probably ever been the case in our working lifetime. Yeah. And so people are looking at new projects and new signage opportunities and new communication opportunities. There is so much to go for. But I think for those people that really do proactively go for it, I would say, again, just do it in the right kind of with the right kind of connectivity, and I think there are real opportunities.
Nate?
Yeah, I want to say, and our view is we clearly, depending on who our clients are, and most clients are not paying anymore because they're not trading, but we're still helping them along, and those who are trading, we're clearly, even more eager to help. But I launched my business just before September 11. And then we had, and then things have been going up and down, and then we had the 2009 crisis, and then now we've got this. And my view is people will remember those who have been with them all along, and I'm a firm believer, what goes round comes round. And if you have been sympathetic, if you have been helping people, if you have been with them during these difficult times, I think there is a stronger chance they will remember you, either to do business with you or to recommend you later. So I think it's well worth continuing the dialogue with everybody, keeping top of mind, showing empathy, trying to help them out,
Suzanne?
Yeah, I was just going to really second that, Anik, because for what I do, no one's moving house at the moment. Everything I do is face-to-face, helping them declutter and sort through their things, or go and measure up for them and things like that. So from my point of view, I'm just phoning people just to have a chat and see how they are, or dropping them an email. So people even who work in social services, who I do ad hoc work for, clearances for people and things like that, and just to drop them a line or give them a call to say, hello, how are you? And they all sound really happy for me to be asking how they are and to have a bit of a chat. And I think in terms of the long game, I suppose that's my soft selling, if you like, anyway. But why not take the time to talk to people anyway, because they will remember, and that I think goodwill and everything like that, like you say, Anik, is something that's actually quite invaluable.
Absolutely, and I guess that's what I was referring to when I said meet clients where they are, because they are in funny places at the moment, very often not places they expected to find themselves, but they will remember you sooner or later when they have the time to remember people that look out for them.
Yeah. I like Graham's comment on the chat: treat prospects like clients and clients like friends. I like that. I think that's really good. I think it's about sensitivity, not selling. And I think when you're calling people and you're showing empathy, and they maybe feel like they may have a lot more time on there, that they're doing 2 or 3 jobs, as you said earlier. But see if there's any way that you can help them get some of that time back. That just by putting an offer out there, you're just going round the desk and you're on their side. So I think it's you're going to get different reactions from different people, which is why I quite like Martin's categorization. And then actually people are going to move through those categories at different times as we go through this process.
I think because we're networkers as well, when you're having these conversations, I've had a lot of conversations with people on LinkedIn. So I've thought, who would I like to do business with in future? I'm not even talking to them about business right now. We've connected and we're having conversation. And when you ask them about situations that they're having, problems they're having, they don't understand this. We have a massive bank of people as networkers that we know that we can always refer people to. So it's just making that introduction. You know, if somebody says, oh, I'm struggling with this, and I think, okay, I know somebody who might be able to help. And again, you say, this is not a lead where you might get any business. This is just somebody you might want to have a conversation with. So even thinking like that, that people will think, oh, that was really good. She introduced me to that person. So it's definitely worth just spending time communicating with people and not doing the hard sell, as you said, Martin.
I think a lot of businesses are actually
business
trying
community.
I think businesses are trying to pivot and they're trying to change and adapt, in which case they need to communicate that somehow. So there's an opportunity there for all these businesses that are actually trying to change.
I think we've all seen as well, Chris and everyone. You know, lots of businesses now providing free information. We've all gone for free webinars, free downloads, etc. And whilst the word isn't going to go away, I don't think there's anything wrong with also introducing that things have a price. So, you know, if you are going to do something for free, there's nothing wrong in mentioning, you know, I'm doing this for free. You know, it's normally 50 quid. It's up to you if you pay me or not, but I'm going to provide a service. And you'll be surprised that actually some people will want to pay you or, you know, contribute to a charity that you might be working with or something like that. Because that is going to add value to what you're doing, to you as a person, to you as a business. And actually you'll be surprised people will actually pay you because they realise, you know, he owns his own business. He needs paying. He's got bills to pay. You know, but if you don't ask that question, that's not going to come, is it?
No, and I would agree with this. And it's interesting. So first of all, as a result of all this situation, I've reconnected with a lot of people who have disappeared because you haven't got time, you are busy. So anyway, so I reconnect with somebody and I offered to do a background for him this morning. And he said, how much? I said, no, don't worry, I'll just do it. You know, it's simple to do, blah, blah, blah. And now the next thing I know, he's producing names to introduce me to. You know, this is somebody I totally lost touch with. Yeah. And, you know, and he's coming up, have you heard of Senso? Let me introduce you. And what about this network? And the next thing I know, I've now got three new networks and some names he's going to make introductions to. So I think it's a win-win situation, you know, as far as I'm concerned, because suddenly I'm top of mind in markets I didn't even know existed. So
that's it, and it's an interesting challenge when at a time when relationships are probably more important than ever, and people are connecting in that sort of way. Sort of brings me back to your question, Carl. With it, what's the balance between effectively a cold approach to somebody and mounting a sort of telesales campaign versus doing that networking thing and using relationships you've got, and which one is going to be the most effective over coming weeks and coming months? Because it may be that the supple getting introduced might be more effective than, say, a telesales campaign. Of course, it all depends on your audience and where you're pitching. But I guess it's coming thinking through how people are likely to respond to the approach that they get, and which is most likely to motivate them to act differently.
I agree, and I think we're only likely to see the results of that by testing the waters. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing this, probably we're all doing it at the moment. I'm mining my LinkedIn contacts, those that I haven't spoken to in many years, and just reaching out to say, how are you guys getting on? And it'd be what a great time to have a chat, because we haven't had time to have a chat for the last few years. So that's worked, and I have opened up some new avenues with contacts that I haven't spoken to in 6 or 7 years. That's good, but I want to try and balance that and see whether that telesales is right and whether anyone had said, yes, it's working. You know, the feedback seems to be, yes, why not? You know, what can you lose, really?
Good. Have we got any other questions, any other topics that people wanted to pick up on? I think did we have a question about channels, Chris, beforehand?
Yeah, Alex, we've sort of covered this. Is aside from the obvious grounding of leisure, hospitality and travel, which sector which sectors do you see as the key target for growth? We've already covered the condoms and the Bible, so
yeah, that's all done. Yeah, yeah, perhaps not both at once.
no.
So yeah, so I think I suppose a part of this is how are consumers going to behave. In some ways we can predict, in some ways we can't. So I think at the moment consumers are spending more on things related to homes and what can do in the gardens. The gardening's gone bonkers, baking's gone bonkers, and a lot of consumers are saying it won't be the same. Now, consumers are renowned, aren't they, for doing research and giving answers that they don't follow through on. But a lot of consumers are saying things won't be the same. They can't go back to how it was before. So you might assume that things like home baking will catch on. People will actually enjoy baking cakes with the kids, and maybe people will spend more time in the garden. I think residential homes quite an interesting one because recession is likely to make that more difficult. But on the other hand, people may say, I'm going to cut back on travel, I'm going to cut back on some other things, and maybe invest more in the homes. I think that's quite a difficult one to predict. But we're going to see, I'm sure we'll see a growth in online. I can't, it's really difficult to see, for example, that supermarket deliveries drop back to the level they were at 3 months ago. I think people will just find a way of saying, it was convenient. When you can get a slot, it's convenient, and no reason not to stick with it. And so there's some things that patterns of behaviour I think will change for good. And that means that online, in whatever format, online Zoom will never be the same again. Well, it'll be much bigger. And so then you get into play the other side of that. I think things like real estate, so particularly business real estate, because people are already starting to say we're not sure we need the same number of offices. That will have an impact on transport, local transport, as in transport for London being virtually bust already. So there will be some industries that segment, and I think some that are difficult to call. One of the ones I think is quite interesting to speculate about is the environment and green, because at the moment everybody's saying how lovely it is to be in the garden and you can see the hills in the distance and you can't smell the vehicles. But when pressure comes back on and we have to earn a crust, I think it's unpredictable whether people will really follow through with that. So I love the fact that the streets felt clean. So that's one I would. The jury's out. I hope we take.
Sorry, it wasn't exciting.
No, I totally agree. So my background, me and my business partner, we both work in sustainability marketing.
All right. Yeah.
And it's exactly that. Like, if your business is in a difficult situation, like, it's a lovely box to be able to tick and talk about. But if there's so many industries at the moment that are just pedaling to stay afloat, I don't feel like we can walk in and start talking about how are you going to talk to consumers about your sustainability initiatives when it's just not the right moment for it. And I think your point about community is right. Like, the world becomes a smaller place and you become more focused on the local community. But yeah, we're struggling.
Well, so sustainability is an interesting one because I think there are some pretty compelling evidence of businesses that focus very much on purpose and on CSR are trading better than others. So whether there's a spin you can put onto that to say, look, that it's not an added cost to do green. If they can find the right approaches, and it's just about making sure that the environment looks after in the way that they do business, and maybe it's a way of sort of sitting the purpose of the business and their proposition, maybe in a more long-term way. And seizing on the fact that the consumers right now are in a different place, either deliberately because they can't get to work or out of choice because they're getting on a bike.
And Alex, don't forget you're talking to a certified B Corp here.
Not that I have an agenda for you.
Oh, I totally buy into the B Corp thing for sure. No, I think we're baby. We don't have enough clients to say we've got enough relationships to fall back on. We've only been going like under a year. So we were just starting to get going. And so everything is new business pretty much.
So frustrating times, isn't it? But I think the early indications are that health and wellness as a whole are likely to come out this bigger. So it's not just about the hospital stuff, which is the obvious thing about money being poured into the NHS and nurses probably getting a pay rise in due course. But all sorts of things like, what did I hear? I think kefir sales are up, seeing people using nutritional supplements, all that sort of stuff. People, the likelihood is when we're finding that out, people will be doing more exercise, will have dusted off their bike, will have started jogging again. So I think that whole wellness piece looks like it will accelerate as a result of this, because a proportion of people will just care more about health. Again, maybe another way of playing the argument around. But you could probably also think of sectors that you could, right now, if I said give 10 sectors that are going to be bigger in 3 years' time, 10 will be smaller, and 10 you couldn't predict. Probably the bigger and the smaller, the easier list to do, and the ones you can't predict might be the hardest list to come up with. I mean, professional services like accountancies and lawyers, there's going to be so many contractual disputes coming out of the last 8 weeks. So lawyers are going to be having a boom time. So there are all sorts of just industries when they start to look at them.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think I was on a call this morning that went through some of the evidence from previous recessions, and it's not necessary that people have to spend more now to come out better the other end. They just have to keep their marketing and sort of sales spend the same, because everybody else is dropping back, and therefore they get the advantage coming out at the other end. And I think, you know, we have a sort of a responsibility to help advise people about that and keep that and help them keep that going.
Yes, as long as you can manage the cash flow of continuing to spend on sales and marketing, then you'll be in a better place at the end of it. So obviously businesses have to look after their day-to-day needs, and if they can't pay their staff next week, then they've got to think about that first. But any business that can afford to carry on investing. And I think one of the things that, again, it sort of goes to the heart of my motivations around business is that often the businesses that can afford to carry on spending like that are the big players. So it's a lot of the big, I think it was Heinz who were reputed in the previous recession, cleaned up because they had the funds to carry on spending. And for small businesses, that is more difficult. And it's partly why there was such a big fuss when small businesses were left out of the furlough scheme and there wasn't support, is because it's harder for small businesses to keep at it because they don't have the reserves of cash. But if you can access it through government schemes or whatever means, then yeah, they'll be better off by carrying on spending.
Excellent. Anybody got any other questions? Has that been useful? Have we got some takeaways, some things to think about?
Yeah, all good. Thanks.
Yes.
Great, really useful, interesting conversation as well. Thanks for everybody's contribution.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Just a quick plug for the Agency Local Insight event on the 21st of May. It's not a Zoom call. You'll be pleased to hear. Zoom fatigue, it's not Zoom. But it is an online networking environment where you're in control and you can actually go and choose who you talk to. So that should be quite interesting. And we've got 2 speakers on the subject of leadership. So that's leadership of yourself, of your business, and of your market. So that's at 6 p.m. on the 21st. There's a link on the website, etc., or drop me a note. Hopefully see you there. Hopefully you've enjoyed that, got some value. Thank you very much for taking part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you all.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good afternoon.